Hi, this is Mitchell Levy, and welcome to episode 113 of Thought Leader Life. The month we've had so far has been amazing, and today will be no exception. We've had Jacob Warwick with us, who is copywriter, brand storyteller, and he's brought on a very interesting set of guests so far, and we're really talking about authenticity in the millennial generation, and of course we're letting the conversation meander wherever it makes sense. And Jacob, thanks again for joining me for the month.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I figured bringing on some more branded folks, content writers, journalists, the kind of people that control that outward authenticities will be good to our story today. So let's see how it goes.
Oh, and I absolutely agree with you. It was the right choice of folks to bring on. We've got Han-Gwon Lung and Dan Foley, who are the co-founders of Tailored Inc. And guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mitch.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. Hey, so before we learn a little bit more about Tailored Inc., let's just dive directly into the question. What does authenticity in the millennial generation actually mean to you? What pictures conjured up in your mind when we told you about that question?
Dan, you want to go first? I know you have some ideas.
Yeah, I'll field this. Okay, so I thought about this a lot, and one of the things that came to mind was the idea of the internet, right? I think the reason why millennials crave authenticity is because of the internet, but almost in a paradoxical way. The ability to have more information, and at that, more truthful information. People are held to a higher standard of honesty because you can fact check. Companies are held to a higher standard of quality because you can see what else is out there. So because of that, millennials have grown up with the internet and therefore crave that authenticity that the internet provides. But almost paradoxically, the internet isn't real and platform. So I think in the same way, the reason why people crave authenticity in the millennial generation is because they spend so much time in this virtual reality internet world. So I think it's kind of interesting how it both spawns it and also kind of deters it at the same time.
That was a really interesting response, Dan. I have to tell you right now, I've got somebody on my team who's doing a AHA book on millennial pet peeves, and you covered 3 of the pet peeves in your response. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Wait, what were 3?
Yeah, well, it was the one was we're living in a world where everyone knows what we're doing, so you got to be careful. But and so that was an interesting one. And then on the other side is we're living in a fake world, so be careful what you read, right? Which was kind of interesting, which is the lack of that. And then there was also this one was really, we had two which were very similar. When you're living in this world where you could do the fact checking and know what's going on, the interesting part is that anyone could be a almost instant celebrity, right? And so we actually had a pet peeve on a positive and negative side. So there was somebody who said, hey man, it's great that if you do a good job and you're authentic in who you are, you could become a celebrity on X. And then we had another person who was maybe an older soul who said, it's not, if you become an instant celebrity on Instagram, for instance, it's not real. And it was just it was very interesting. I'm actually looking forward to this book because it was a very interesting insight into the millennial generation. But listening to you talk in your response, you definitely are capturing both sides. So
Absolutely.
Can you guys talk a little bit about, just so the audience knows, tell me about Tailored Inc. and what you guys are doing and what the firm does.
Yeah, sure, I can tackle that one. Yeah, just really quickly to add on to what Dan said, he actually made me realize something too. Part of the reason I think authenticity is so important for millennials is ironically because, yeah, like you said, ironically there's so much fake stuff on the internet and so much real stuff that they get to compare themselves to like what their friends are doing, whether that be like, just bragging on Facebook or like actual life achievements on LinkedIn, And then everyone sort of, they hear the same message all the time. You can be whatever you want. You have to be authentic. And so it's almost like if you're not authentic, you're like missing out on something, It's not even like a choice anymore. If you don't follow your dreams and go down the path that you would go down if money were not an issue, you're somehow like failing your own expectations or society's expectations of you, your own generation's expectations of yourself. So Tailored Inc. was pretty much started because of that, right? I grew up in a culture that really does not value authenticity in the way that we're talking about it, In the Asian American culture, especially like immigrant Asian culture, stability is valued above all else. And that means getting the job that pays the standard, stable salary, supporting your family, being close to family, that stuff, right? So it's not that authenticity is frowned upon, but I grew up with that dichotomy, and I realized I had to choose one or the other, and I wanted to choose being authentic to myself because that's the generation I grew up in. And I've always loved to write. Dan's always loved to write. We're both writers at heart. We have had a bunch of odd jobs, as I'm sure Jacob and you both have had as well in the past, and we didn't like them. We didn't like the status quo. We didn't like corporate America that much. We didn't like being part of a pecking order, and we had a vision for what we wanted to do, and it was either do that or, like I mentioned earlier, feel as if we had somehow failed ourselves. So we started Tailored Inc. We used our agency experience to start a little boutique, and we got a bunch of really great writers to join us on the ride. So we've always thought of it less as like an agency and more as just a roster of people who want to do and write the things that matter to them the most.
So what does authentic writing actually mean? So we're talking about your clients, and you write a piece that you think is spectacular, and for instance they hate it. What happens?
That's a very good question. We try not to upset them any further. That's the first thing that happens. And then I think, one of the interesting things about writing as a copywriter is that you don't have
creative freedom.
Exactly. So when you're a novelist or like anyone who writes fiction for a living, or a professor, let's say, who writes your own, dissertations or research papers for a living, you can use your own voice for the rest of your life, right? No one expects you to do anything other than that. And that's very freeing. When you're a copywriter, you can't do that because you're expected to make the clients happy. You have to write with their voice. So it's in a way constraining because in order to be authentic as another person, you have to really hold back yourself in some ways. Like you can't use your natural voice sometimes. But I think, on the flip side, as any artist or creative knows, there's a lot of flexibility in working within constraints. At the same time, I've never seen it as like, oh, I can't write in my own voice. I have to write in, let's say, this fitness client's voice. I've always thought of it as, okay, I have my own voice, which I write the most comfortably in. This client has a voice that they speak most authentically in. How do I put myself in their shoes, but still write the way I like to write? And usually that works. That usually hits, the mark for most clients. And I'm glad that I haven't had to like compromise my own voice or my own vision for what good writing should be.
This sounds like we're talking about empathy again.
Yeah.
This has been a recurring theme. Empathy and authenticity have been, authenticity guided, but empathy has come up every time we've mentioned authenticity.
Yeah, I think maybe that's the title of our book. Authenticity equals empathy. Who knows? We'll figure that out.
Hey, that was my aha last week.
That was absolutely your aha, and I have to tell you, as soon as you said it, Jacob, by definition, it was on the radar, and I kept seeing this recurring empathy theme. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I saw in other places where it should have been speaking to me at other times. Like, when you're reading an article and you read about it and someone tells you, this is the way the market's going, and you're like, yeah, whatever, and then you finally figure it out for yourself, and you go, that's what they meant.
Dan, what do you think? Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So no, I was gonna say, it's funny that you guys talk about this idea of empathy, and everyone kind of touched on it. And the idea of millennials, there's a stigma that exists with millennials that millennials don't have empathy, that they're very narcissistic, that they, were very self-absorbed, cell phones are the biggest indicator of this, but also the selfies, just all these kind of things. Thank you very much, Mr. Jacob. And what?
Yeah, don't worry, I'm listening.
I'm sure you are. And one of the things that I found, so I did some research on this as well, and one of the crazy things is there's another dichotomy that exists here, where millennials actually have the highest rate of narcissism in the last. It's about 1 in 10 people, versus that of previous generations, which is about maybe like 1 in 30. But at the same time, millennials are more likely to value giving back to society, and are more likely to value, kind of like nonprofits or groups that have some sort of philanthropic background. So you have this kind of weird dichotomy where, like, yes, millennials are very empathetic in that sense, but there is also this kind of growing narcissism that exists as well.
Do you think they support those causes because it supports their narcissism? We say, I'm a better person because I'm supporting a brand that supports someone that cares about something else?
See, that's an interesting point. I mean, I don't like to cast any broad strokes around it, but there probably is that element. There probably is that element of people being like, look at how authentic I am, look at how real I am. I'm part of insert group name here.
Right.
But I don't think all the, I think there is that kind of like facade of authenticity sometimes. But also, the millennial generation is the one that values experiences more than anything else. And, instead of like saying, oh, I have the best TV, or oh, look how fast my car is, or whatever, there seems to be more of a focus on, I had an experience that actually meant something to me. And if, you can call that narcissistic, but you can also just call that, trying to understand the world better, or trying to experience, different culture, or see something that's outside of your own world, which I think is the opposite of narcissism, which is very much, trying to move towards empathy and trying to move towards a more altruistic state of mind.
Yeah, I think a great metaphor for what Dan's talking about is just the whole hipster movement in Brooklyn right now. Because everyone loves to hate on the gentrification of Brooklyn, specifically Williamsburg, where all the hipsters have gone. And the stereotype is that most of them are not. They're like pretenders because they actually come from well-to-do families and are pretending to be starving artists. So on one side, that's not real authenticity. I think that's like when you're trying to be authentic, but you don't really realize what it means. But on the other hand, it's almost like commendable in a strange way that they just haven't gone down the whole. They haven't taken the path of least resistance. They want to do something that will connect them more with the people around them. And I guess right now, being a hipster is like the way of doing that in Brooklyn. So I think it has I think it comes from a good place. It's not just purely narcissistic, but there are definitely narcissistic elements there. They want to also embrace like the cool mystique of the Bohemians a century ago, like Edgar Allan Poe, back when they lived in the village. But I also think a big part of the appeal of being a hipster is, I want to be close to my community, even though I didn't grow up in this kind of a community. How do I do that? How do I embrace my neighbor more in a place like New York City, right, where everyone's tribal? So there's that element to it too. I agree with Dan. I think there's good things and bad things about millennial authenticity, as I see it.
Well, I think Dan, what you're saying, and Han, what you guys are saying really is, so millennials are living out loud a little bit more, right? Maybe society always was narcissistic, but there was a part of time, particularly the Industrial Revolution, where we sort of were taught to get in our shells and work for corporate and make life different. And I think I'm not convinced, Jacob, that the empathetic arm is simply when we're helping other causes, it's simply because we want to appear like we're helping others. I think people really care. I just think in the past, we didn't really have the easy vehicle. We didn't have crowdfunding. We didn't have, the Kickstarter campaigns and the GoFundMe campaigns. We weren't able to tell a story that was received and universally accepted by others. And as a result, we just couldn't do the types of things that we can do now. And now we're trying to figure out what does that actually mean.
Well, so I didn't mean that by supporting those causes you were being narcissistic per se. I'm just saying that sometimes when you do things like that, it can appear as if it's not authentic, and I'm not exactly sure what that looks like. So it could mean like, oh, here's a picture of me taking a selfie at a soup kitchen and sharing it across 6 different social networks, like to say, yes, I'm helping and trying to rally other. You could have the best intentions. You could be trying to rally other people to do the same thing. However, your execution and how you delivered makes it look like you're not authentic in some cases, right? So this is like a classic PR thing where you're managing the message to see exactly what it, how it turns back on you. And obviously not everyone works in marketing or PR, so they don't know how to control the message. But I'm saying when you're truly authentic in your cause, it will appear as so.
Got it. That makes sense. Hey guys, at Tailored Inc., I want to stick for a second with the question regarding sort of client expectations in terms of what you write and how you go about writing it. And tell me what happens when you initially meet a client that, quote unquote, they know they want you but they don't know why. Tell me what it is that what's that conversation? How do you get the client to recognize the type of writing that you guys do and how you drive the authenticity in their voice and how it's important to them to understand that's important for the marketplace?
So I think Han and I we might have slightly different strategies here. Han and I have a good yin yang kind of thing going on, where he's very much a go-getter, a little bit more aggressive. I'm a little bit more laid back in my approach. But I think one thing that we share is the first question that we tend to ask clients is, what do you want out of your marketing? What are you looking for in terms of your brand image? What kind of content do you want? What are your goals and what image are you trying to produce? Because I think too often, if you come at clients with saying like, this is what you need this, this is the type of voice, this is the type of whatever, then it's kind of off-putting. But when you kind of give them a little bit of control and a little bit of like kind of from the onset, then you can kind of guide them along from there and recommend them things, so they still feel like it's their voice and they're part of the process. And I think that through that kind of like synergy of the two parties working together, you kind of find their voice and you kind of find their needs through that.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I just wanted to add on to it really quickly. Sometimes I've realized it's not even about language per se. It's about just intentions. A lot of times we have clients, especially startups, they just had a great idea for a product in their head, and they're serial entrepreneurs, so they went for it. But like now that they got the seed money, they've realized they're not actually like maybe in love with their product or the service really. It's just something that people need. So then you have to really ask yourself as the founder of a startup, why do I want to sell this? Why do I want to market this? Do I really love this myself? And I think that's sometimes something we help them navigate through too. Before you can even talk about an authentic voice, you need to want to say something. So usually we ask our clients, what do you want people to know, feel, and do when they see your brand? And half the time they can't answer like 2 of those 3 questions. So we start there.
I like it. It's the empathy button, empathy question. Hey guys, I'm meandering on this conversation, and I couldn't get something out of my mind. And I don't know if you saw this, Jacob, but Gary Vee had a 10-minute video recently where he was talking about his new book, but he was on a news show. It's like a Good Morning America or Good Morning Today or whatever it was, and he was having a heated argument with the person who one of the correspondents on the other side. And the argument was simply that social media has gone too far, that millennials, he had seen a picture of, he had showed up on the screen a picture of a wedding couple as they're walking out to their car in wedding gown, holding their phone like this. And the guy behind the scene, the other guy says, "Hey, this is horrendous. How could they possibly be in technology?" And Gary Vee is saying, well, maybe they posted their picture and they want to see how many people liked it or what their friends are saying. And the guy could not understand why this was a good thing. And Gary's saying, well, this is maybe the way life was. We want instant reaction from our friends and family and people who couldn't have made it. How do you react to that? What does that mean to you? Should wedding couples be in their face doing this stuff? Is this good or bad?
I don't know if you want to ask me that question because I could rant about that for a long time. I'm going to say something shocking. I follow Gary Vee on social networks, but I do not watch anything that he does. Not to like make any waves or anything, but I try to look at other social influencers kind of from afar and then pick apart as I will. But I don't particularly want to be influenced by other social influencers. I want to kind of build my own based off what I determined to remain authentic, because I've noticed that when somebody says something, it changes the whole industry because Gary Vee has a huge voice. If he makes something acclaimed, then 400 people are going to copy him over the next 6 months with content, and that's just not something I want to be influenced by. As for the face and the phone thing, I've always kind of been like a quiet observer, like the fly on the wall is who I prefer to be, although sometimes I take stage, and it kind of disgusts me in a way, only because there's so much life outside of it, and like the authentic me doesn't want to be in my phone all the time, and the authentic me doesn't want to be on Facebook all the time, and doesn't want to be on social, period. But I work in social media, so I'm having an identity crisis right now I posted the other day, I deleted my Snapchat account, I no longer post to Instagram, I stopped Pinterest, and I stopped like all of these things that I was doing just so I can regain a little bit more of who I am. And I understand how the networks work, and I need to study them from a distance to write about them and participate in some manner for brands. But me personally, it's not something that I want to do. So me finding myself more authentically and cutting those pieces out has helped me with that. So to answer the question, I'm not really sure how to, because I'm pretty biased on the fact that I don't like where it's going. And I'm almost adamant about, even though I am a millennial, I've said things like, however the millennials want to vote, just don't do it. Whatever the millennials want to do, don't do it. I don't want it. Which is, again, that's a generalization, but that's kind of how I've started taking things. And yeah, I don't think I can answer that question appropriately.
You certainly have a certain set of pet peeves, Mr. Warwick, I'm telling you.
Yeah, we'll get to it. I shouldn't publicize them because people might turn on me.
You're just being authentic. Han, what do you think?
I think Jacob brings up a good point in that a lot of people are addicted to social media, and then you get into the question of, well, is addiction authentic? Because it's certainly human to like get addicted to something like social media, but is that what you want in your heart of hearts? And it's probably not. So I think, yeah, the word authentic means more than just like be yourself or like be a human being, because there's a lot of negative stuff there. I think ideally, no, you should not be on your phones during your wedding. I think certain things should happen in the real world. Social media is meant to facilitate real world interactions, not replace them. So I agree with Jacob on that part.
And Dan?
So while I think my heart is more with what Jacob and Han are saying, from just kind of like a theoretical standpoint, I think that the problem is there's a lack of intentionality with social media. I mean, like, for instance, right, I'm in a long-distance relationship with a girl who lives in Dubai right now. And if it weren't for things like, but yeah, long distance. So if it weren't for social media, I would never, like, we would have a very hard time communicating with each other. And it's a good way to kind of like, to share. And I mean, obviously I'm casting a wide umbrella and saying that, things like instant messages and things like that kind of cover the whole social media spectrum. But I guess it's this. If you're spending, 20 minutes a day absently scrolling through Facebook with no real intention in mind, to me, yeah, you're wasting that time. You're not being authentic. It's become an addiction. Yeah. But I think that social media and things like that, used in the proper way, actually do a better job of illuminating reality and bringing people together. My second job out of college I got because one of my buddies from Korea needed a guy to do marketing for them in his company. and that got me a job in Seoul, which was amazing. But he reached out to me through Facebook, and we hadn't spoken in 4 years. But he knew that I was a writer because of my blog that I'd been posting on there. So I got a job in the real world through social media, but because of a real friend. So, I mean, to me, it's about how much you use it and the intentionality of how you use it. That wedding couple, maybe they were just, trying to get one quick, selfie with everyone in the background and, like, take it off and, like, be like, oh, let's cherish this moment and have a memory of it that we made on our phone. So, I mean, I guess that's the kind of optimistic twist on how I feel about authenticity in social media.
Yeah, and I mean...
Okay.
Oh, that's where I have the biggest conflict for me. I mean, every job I've ever had has been because of social media. I position myself because I use social media. I've learned how to create my resume based off of influencers I've met through social media. I've been hired from social media. I've been, from LinkedIn, from Facebook, from people seeing that I was friends with someone on Facebook and then sending a message, I heard you're a writer. I need some work. Can you help me? And I've just built so much of a presence and so many opportunities that you almost have a fear that if you're not there, you get that missing out. So the FOMO, or I don't know how to say it, fear of missing out is an issue right now where like I need to see everything that's going on so I can make the best decision at every possible moment or be open to as many opportunities as possible at every possible moment. And that's where I'm struggling with. I would rather be much more targeted and driven. As Dan was mentioning, but I don't know what that means yet. I mean, it's something that we're constantly working through, so that's where a lot of my conflict and clash is. And another reason why I decided to say, okay, I'm going to be on social, but I'm only going to focus on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, right? And I'm going to remove them from my phone so that if I'm away from my computer, it's not social time. It's in-person time. My phone will be used for emails and texting only, and not Twitter or anything else. So I've started going down that path, but I haven't figured out how that works yet. Or if you never hear from me again, it probably didn't work.
So I like that, and I think my goals or my thoughts, and I'm thinking about the wedding couple. Going back to this, I think if you're the parents of the wedding couple, you're appalled, right? But I think if it turns out that both participants are happy doing this, I think that's absolutely fine. It's just this is an analytic experience, but when we have guests coming to our house, and so we have people in our house and the phone rings, and we have all the guests that we know, we don't answer the phone, right? And everyone around the table is looking at us and saying, "Are you going to pick up?" And we're like, "No, we're with you," right? And I think that's the struggle, is that this thing is now more than just a phone. This thing is, the Snapchat, the Instagram, the Facebook, all the stuff happening, and you just have to decide where you are at the moment and if you are with the people you're supposed to be to do that. And I think as writers, it's your guys' job to sort of lead by example, whatever the leading is, and show a story that's authentic and allows people to really be them, regardless. There's no right or wrong answer, so you could be on either side of the equation. And Jacob, there's nothing right or wrong about your approach or anyone else's because it's yours, right? Well, and if it makes you comfortable, right?
Yeah, and the content also. I mean, we're talking about creating content as well as writers. It needs to be channel specific, and my writing is more channel specific to those three audiences. I mean, I'm not going to take a great picture on Instagram with my cell phone because that's just not. I don't like digital pictures. I like film pictures, and it's a pain in the ass to take and scan your film and upload it to Instagram. So the way I want to deliver my brand on Instagram, I don't want to do it through my phone because it doesn't represent my brand authentically. On LinkedIn, I have more opportunity to write business articles and things like that. That represents me more authentically than any picture of something on Instagram, so to speak. And all my social is driven for business because I don't particularly need it for personal reasons. I could care less where my friends thought I was on the weekend on Instagram or on Snapchat. And so I'm not seeing the return there, and it's just kind of distracting me from all the other things I want to do. So since the channel is so important, those are the 3 channels where I can be authentic, and that's why I'm choosing to use those.
Nice. And I think, what about you guys? I think it's amazing to me, so let's use this time at the end. It's always amazing to me how quickly 30 minutes goes. Let's use the time at the end to be a little bit more open. Is there a piece of, is this conversation gone in the direction you wanted? Is there something that you'd like to add at the end that sort of summarizes sort of the thoughts for either yourself or your firm or your audience or whatever you think really makes sense? And Dan, we'll start with you in terms of how would you like to summarize this? Should we have taken the conversation one direction, or are you happy, and what else should we cover?
No, I mean, I really liked where it went. I'm still kind of processing what Jacob just said, and it was so actually, like, this whole idea of like intentionality and what mediums you use and what, you know, how you use them and what you describe, I think it's a very interesting idea, and I think that's the key to authenticity, is that, you know, every generation has like had some glaring problem. You know, when television came out, it was like, oh, this is going to destroy everything. You know, when you know, the internet came out, oh, this is going to destroy everything, computers, whatever. And it's not. It's not going to destroy everything. But there are people who are going to spend 8 hours a day watching TV. There are people who are going to, you know, be on their phone more than they are in the real world. And so I think the kind of idea that, or the general idea that I got out of this is, it's not about what you use that makes you authentic. It's more about how you use it and when you choose to use it, and if you're still, you know, existing in the real world.
Nice. And I appreciate that. And Dan, how do people reach out to you if they want to contact you?
So they can reach me at dan@tailored.inc. That's INK. Or go to our website at tailored.inc.
So for those that are either watching or listening, we all know that there's more than .com and .net. But I have to tell you, I created a company called Happy About, and my initially it was happyabout.info because it was a publishing company. And the first time I was on the radio, the announcer goes, "Hey, go to happyabout.info.com." So obviously I picked up that URL as well. This firm, I love. It's the first firm I bumped into. It's tailored, TAILORED.INK. Super cool. Just for nothing more than seeing a URL that's not a .com, go and visit it.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome. Han, how about you? How would you like to add to the wrap up? What should we have covered, or how do you want to summarize?
I think there's definitely more things we could talk about, but like you said, you know, 30 minutes is a pretty short amount of time. What I got from the conversation I found really interesting is that it helped me sort of solidify my thoughts on what it means to be authentic, you know, and Dan was talking about how it doesn't matter how or why you use it as long as there's an intentionality to it. And Jacob was saying, you know, you shouldn't be doing things because of FOMO or the fear of missing out. And I said much earlier, like at the beginning of this conversation, the reason we started Tailored Inc. Is because I think our generation sort of challenges every millennial and everyone in our generation to live the life they could live if money were no object. In other words, if fear were not an object, right? So I think really, in like a big picture sort of way, authenticity is when you don't do things out of fear, right? Whether that's the fear of missing out, which drives you to be on social media 8 hours a day, or the fear of like missing a lead, which drives you to do marketing on every social media channel even though you don't want to or can't afford to, right? That's like not authenticity. You should do what, I mean, it sounds cliche, but you should do what you want to do, and not because you're afraid of missing out on an opportunity. And that's why we started Tailored Inc. You know, we didn't stay in full-time jobs because we were afraid we would miss out on a promotion, for example, right? So that's like the big thing I got out of this. And yeah, no, I love the conversation. I really like what we talked about.
And I'm honored to meet both of you because I'm a big fan of doing what you want to do, but I didn't start doing that till later on in life. So. And Han, how do people reach out to you? What's the best way to connect to you?
Just one letter difference from Dan's email. It's han@tailored.ink.
I think they can handle that.
Yeah.
Thanks. Hey, Jacob, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Han brought up that was a key aha for me. That's why I was doing the thumbs up. where brands have fears of missing out on leads. I have a general rule of thumb for being on a network, and now that I'm practicing what I preach, it's a little bit easier to not be hypocritical. But if you're on a channel just because it's the next best thing or because other people are doing it and finding success, if you cannot contribute to that channel the way that's organic and the way that that community was built to be engaged with, then don't be there. As a brand, it's going to come off wrong. If you're on Twitter and you're only posting links as a distribution engine, you're not participating in the Twitter community, and you're more of a nuisance than something beneficial to the people that are there. So I mean, in an attempt to be authentic, I stopped all of my automation, and everything that I post is going to be something that I've read or it's from someone I know and trust, rather than I need to fill my queue to make sure that people are looking at me every so often. And that's the same with Snapchat. If you can't contribute to the Snapchat community in an organic way or a creative way that, drawing pictures, like Sean Duras has built a community because he draws great pictures and he entertains. If your brand is just there to be there, there's really no point. So engage in those channels authentically, or don't engage at all. Is one of my key takeaways. As for everything else, absolutely love it.
I've been percolating that aha moment in my head since you said it. Love it.
Yeah, perfect. And to further be as authentic as possible, I'm not wearing pants right now. And
just wait, guys. We as four guys sitting here on Google Hangout, we're talking before we came out here. The question was, Mitchell, you got a suit jacket on, or you're wearing pants, right? So this is what guys do beforehand. But yeah, thanks.
So yeah, this is authentic. I'm also not wearing shoes. Where I'm in a bedroom, so that's about as authentic as it gets. Also, if you do go to the Tailored Ink website, my face is there. So
it is.
There's no hidden gimmicks there. I met Han and Dan previously, which is why I sent them the invite to the show. So that's about I don't have any weird affiliate links or anything like that, but my face is there, so you might see it. But another key thing, the picture on there is a black and white picture similar to the one I have in my thirds here, and I'm not wearing pants in that either. So keep that in mind. Not everything that you see online is truly authentic.
So is this like this new thing? Instead of Where's Waldo, it's the who's wearing pants or not?
No, I mean, the thing is, my picture is pretty damn cool, in my opinion, because it is me, one, and I'm in the middle of the woods in Forest Hill, California. If anyone's ever been there, it's probably rare that you have, but Forest Hill is where the big green bridge is that they jumped the Corvette off of in XXX. It's like the second largest bridge in the United States. But up in the woods there, I'm in a suit, I don't have pants on, and the camera was the picture was taken on an old 1980s Hasselblad on film, and the flashes didn't fire, and that's the truth. Each picture has a story, and that's that one. So that's
you're no soul. And hey, Jacob, how do people reach out to you?
If you haven't gotten it by now, you can Google me, Jacob Warwick, or you can email me at jacob.warwick@gmail.com. I pretty much control the first page of search, so everything on there is me.
Poor anyone else with the name Jacob Warwick. And for me, just feel free to Google Mitchell Levy, connect to me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. I go to thoughtleaderlife.com. This is our 113th episode. I think we've got up to 109 posted at the moment, so we post weekly. It's great conversations. I love this particular month and the particular focus on authenticity. And guys, one of the things I'd like to suggest we do at some point in time, whether or not we do it, either another show or we do a post, I want to at some point in time I want to take Jacob's aha moment and because you had said if you can't authentically participate on a social media channel the way the channel is meant to be, don't participate. The question becomes, can you lurk? And so I'd love to sort of talk about and research the value of lurkers on different channels for different reasons. That'd be an interesting thing.
I mean, yeah, and certainly you can learn and figure out how to engage, and do testing and things like that. What I'm saying is if you don't figure it out after 6 months, and you're still trying to figure out that ROI, maybe take a step back and learn from other experts and things like that and grow, before you dive into a full funded strategy.
I got it. And you guys, do you guys lurk often on social, or do you actively participate?
I'm a big lurker, big fly on the wall. I mean, I think, as long as you use it for the reason you want to, as long as it fulfills that need for you, then it's fine. You're being authentic. I personally feel no compulsion to tell my friends what I'm doing. I use Facebook to share interesting links to random articles and to see what they're doing, because I don't have time to talk to all of them anymore.
Yep, I got you. Dan, any final parting words? Are you a lurker?
I'm not a lurker. I'd say I'm a dabbler. I look at people's for 5 minutes, shoot out a message here and there, and call it a day.
Got it. It's really interesting. Life is changing a lot. Guys, thanks so much for your participation. I love the conversation, and I'm looking forward to the aha moments that come out of it, because a lot of them, I think, will then drive into new direction over time. So it's just very interesting to hear where we are, what we're doing, how to live life in a different way. And Jacob, I'm going to feast on your comment for a while, because I think it was super valuable. Now, guys, thanks so much for joining us. For those listening, those watching, thanks for participating in Thought Leader Life. We look forward to seeing you at another session. Take care, everybody. Bye now.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.